Hi, I'm Winston McLovin with Radio Free Winlove, and I'm at the Kootenay Yoga Festival, and I'm really thrilled to be sitting here with Mr. Joseph Nillo, who is a friend of mine from the past, and what a great chance to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, it's good to see you.
Yeah, it's
always.
good to see you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you've been busy. I guess to go back, I remember meeting you and working on artistic projects at Shambhala. We were doing a lot of creative infrastructure at the time, and somebody just threw you our way. They're like, what do we do with this amazing artist who's just showed up on the scene and trying to figure out where he fits? And I mean, with this going back a long time, I must say you fit really well, my friend, into the local community and beyond. So maybe we should just, beyond your art and your wonderful creative hand, which many people may have experienced through your paintings or your tattoo work, I think I do want to just head to what's your current work in the world that you're doing?
Yeah, well, I feel like I could bridge from that space, that introduction, because that was a big catalyst for the current work. So I pretty much got dragged to Shambhala. I didn't want anything to do with 15,000 people at a rave, because I'd just been through some stuff, like some deep inner work. Barely left the house in Ontario for a year. Was like fasted like for the better part of a year, down to like 90 pounds. Was going through a total spiritual rebirth. So to go through that and come out here like a new genesis of being. And nobody knew who I was. And in my hometown, I was the tank. Everybody knew me as this big bodybuilder, weightlifter. I was like one of the big guys in like one horse town,
Right.
So then to come out here like 120 pounds, soaking wet, but nobody knew me. It was like just a whole new identity because the reflection was clear. Nobody expected anything of me, So when I showed up at Shambhala, it like really catalyzed that new identity of just like a creative vessel, because I was introduced as an artist. And that's what I was. I'd been tattooing for years, but I wasn't really a muralist or anything. And
we had you up on the scaffolding with paintbrushes just instantly.
And people people flailed and didn't show up, and I was the guy that could just take the job and just like it kind of broke some shackles off my identity of like, I'm a tattoo artist, I do line work, I do like and then I was just felt like past life fractal of just like I'm a being with a tool that makes a mark. What kind of mark do you want me to make? Okay, it's a sign. Okay, it's a juice bar. Okay, and I just felt like I painted the whole town,
And this was the beginning of your work with digital arts as well. I mean, you're a prolific tattoo and pen and ink artist, and since that time, you've unfolded into these different mediums as well.
Totally, yeah. And the psychedelic realm, being at a festival where like pretty much majority of people are on psychedelics,
right?
And I hadn't smoked a joint, like nothing, in like 5 years, just like deep inner healing. And then arriving there and just like, I remember all the people started to pour in that first year at Shambhala. And because it's one thing when it's just the crew and you're making art and like, it's life starts to kind of build and more people arrive and the crew expands and it gets bigger. But then like the people start pouring in and I was just like, oh shit.
15,000 people just showed up in your camping experience, your artistic camping experience.
So this dude was just like, bro, it's like, you're looking pretty tight. And he's like, just take this, brother. And he had some MDMA. I didn't even know what it was. I was like, and I just trusted him. I was like,
risky way to go about it.
So smiley and just feels so wonderful. I'm like, okay, yeah. So that like broke my like sober, like years of sobriety, and then I just got flooded with this, like everything's okay. Like actually, like, and all the people started pouring in and like, I was like, this is awesome. And like, I just really like just melted into this plasmic oneness experience of being with 15,000 people and not resisting any of it, so it was a tremendous healing and tremendous opening into also a new genesis of my identity as an artist, because I was just like running around just painting, drawing. I just like anything I could do to leave a mark and turn it into things, I just had the best time. And so that got me into the kind of like, I'd say it was like the inception of like my art as a visionary pursuit. Like
I can see that.
Transmitting visions and you know, like opening myself to other dimensions, and then seeing like, you know, as the years progress, like the psychonaut like pilgrimage of like how high can I get and what can I yield from that space.
Can I draw a picture of that trip?
Yeah.
It is a strong one.
Exactly.
You do get these, you do get that thing resounding through psychedelic art where there is commonalities, there's geometries, there's certain symbols, there's wings, there's eyes, there's hands, there's certain aspects that unite those experiences. I think people have been trying to draw those things forever. I think we draw a lot more than art from that. Part of me thinks that simple things like weaving and music were potentially discovered through those types of pattern recognitions. And your art, I know your art before and I know your art after these experiences, and definitely those pattern recognitions and those connectivities, I would call them, have shown up in your line work and in your work so strongly. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for reflecting that for us in that way.
Yeah, I found like something about the realm of psychedelic art was there was a kind of, it almost felt like a reoccurring dream where there was like the rainbow fractal, like Alex Gray kind of grid of geometric crystallization of matter, and I'm like, you know, I took LSD and then I saw the grid and I was like, oh, this is real. Like there is eyes everywhere. What? And I could see them, you know, like clear, like I could see exactly what he painted. And I was like, oh, this isn't a hallucination. This is actually a dimension of reality that I'm sensitive enough to be tapped into. But for me, I never really felt to create art that only was really understandable or digestible to someone on psychedelics.
Right.
Like it just kind of created this nuance of a deeper embodied transmission of what I was already creating. So, you know, like I was still making frogs and birds and like the kind of stuff I did tattooing, but it just like the subtle kind of dialect of the line work and the shapes and like the nuances of how like the body of a being would kind of have this flow to it, where like I found LSD, it really kind of made everything like turn just a little bit liquid, you know?
Right.
So like even though the tree was behind the frog, I'd kind of find these ley lines where everything could kind of almost merge into a stream if you looked at it the right way, and just kind of changed the way I perceived depth and flow. And also when, you know, you're on stage in front of thousands of people and you're taking so much LSD that your canvas is dripping off the...
And you're painting for the people as a performance art at that point.
Yeah. I remember there was a couple times where the canvas was literally dripping, you know, like it was moving, it turned into this plasmic goo, and I actually missed it once, and I was like, oh shit, like, you know, maybe I gotta reel it in. And I got to curate artists from all around the world and paint with them, and some of them were like heavy hitters, like had been rave painting for like 20 years,
right?
You know, and they were like really strong on the psychedelics. And I got to a point of like it merged me into plant medicine ceremony, like outside of Shambhala. I just had that deeper interest and pursuit of like, okay, what's out there, you know, what is in these realms, and how are we seemingly like they're so familiar, you know? It's not like I'm like, oh, here's this new thing. It's like, hey, it's like I live here, you know? How am I accessing this familiar place? But it's...
Yeah, I find the DMT experience often first starts with a great big, oh yeah, more so than a wow. Yeah. It's more like, oh God, like how did I forget this? I'm here every night when I'm sleeping.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So yeah, that pursuit of like just seeking like what's the truth, you know, in that big fast I was doing and the big healing I was doing before coming out here, I was just seeking a higher truth, and like I was finding it in the festival realm, but it was so wobbly and so manic, and it's like I reached these dramatically high states and then come out of them and just like be so dysregulated, and I felt like
it's not sustainable. It's a nice opening act, but it's not a sustainable lifestyle.
Totally.
Yeah.
And whereas I found, you know, moving into ceremony and sitting with ayahuasca and then just getting blasted open in such a different way, and coming out of that, like, I met Jesus and was like, that was very dysregulating, had a total rebirth experience, like was the highest I've ever been in my life, and like transcended this dimension to a whole, like heaven on earth essentially. But what I had to do to get there, like makes me think of the Shawshank Redemption, and dude's like crawling out of prison through like the shit, like yards of shit, and he's gotta like what I had to do to get to heaven, and like just satiate myself and all the pain and guilt and just all the stuff that I carried I didn't even understand, to arrive at this place, meeting Christ, and then coming out of there, integrating that at home and being like, what just happened? Like,
am I Christian?
Yeah.
And am I covered in something weird?
Well, I mean, it's like I felt like I found like the Holy Grail,
Right.
Like I had a visitation with heaven, and it wasn't just like angels playing harps on clouds. It was a like biodynamic, visceral, relational experience where like every grain of sand had like clairsentience, and I could see that, like kind of like quantum physics and the double slit experiment, when they observe matter, it like forms based on our observation and expectation. Like me and Christ in this across these ley lines of geometry and like white gold sand and like Lord of the Rings trees that like actually leaned in and hugged you, and I could see that because me and Christ agreed that every molecule was a sentient being and had its own will to choose its destiny.
Right.
It could. So like the sand like could move in spirals and dance in the wind like against or with it, and like everything had this different level of sovereignty.
Right.
That I was like, whoa, like I could see as we all turn online more and more and realize this reality and project that on one another and see freedom and see peace and see love, it manifests in that way. So then from that first ceremony, it was like, how do we create that?
Right.
How do I create that in myself? How do I create that in my community? How do I remove the blocks inside me and find this place of like heavenly peace, that can't really be disturbed by my circumstances? And I'm not there. I can't say I'm there yet, but like it's been a slow emergence into that center, even away from psychedelics, of just finding that homeostatic resting place where I can be a neutral vessel to transmit what I saw there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that now works through my art, works through my. I got really into writing music. I feel like the grandmother ayahuasca has that. Have that calling
for
on
music.
You.
Oh,
Yeah,
very
if
much.
like you got a song in your heart, it's gonna break it free.
Yes.
Eventually, and like seeing my art, like that frequency, that dialect that comes through in the line work or in the idiosyncratic ways that I channel imagery, started to come through in sound.
Yeah, I can relate to the multimedia sort of aspect. I mean, if we are talking about a reflection of the psychedelic world, which is immersive multimedia, but when you're coming out here into the world of mediums and this planet where you're going to either paint pictures or make movies or do whatever you're going to do, I think my first expressions were, I would compare them to tattoo, only I was doing leather work and doing sacred images, mandalas and various things, and like I need to put this on my body and put it on other people's bodies because it relates to that experience. It seems like that's what I'm made of, is that stuff. So there's a certain element of drawing a picture to it. But you touched on something earlier where it's like you don't want to make just psychedelic art for psychedelic people. There's a reason to be here and there's a reason to be expressing. And so I feel like as soon as you start delving into multimedia, like right now we're creating space. One of my primary artistic expressions is a space, our radio studio where people are welcome to come to, and when they get there they have a feeling. And when they enter that space, it's welcoming to everyone. Everyone who walks in recognizes that feeling. They're like, oh, this reminds me of this place I used to go to that was really awesome. And we're like, that's the message. It doesn't have to come through a specific medium, but more a combination of those is just bringing a person to a place.
Totally.
In a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that it has so much to do with like just our embodiment, how much, and like I feel like I've barely seen you in a few years, but it's that subtle dialect, that energetic quality of like, oh hey, it's Chris, like what's up?
Hi.
Like it's that resonant feel that you carry, and it has maybe a multi-dimensional expression, but then it has this Like it's kind of like I was taught there's two qualities of the universe that like maintain its equilibrium to expand forever and also remain the same simultaneously.
Yeah.
And it's that everything is always changing and growing, coalescing, and becoming something new. And then, except for the great I am, the presence that always remains. And I feel like we all have a piece of that, you know? And it's that soul signature quality that, you know, I feel like I can recognize in your necklace, you know, and in the space that you would create. It's that like open, welcoming, like trusting, like yes, you know.
Well, I see it in you as well. And you were mentioning before we started that you are hosting a space now. I remember going to poetry slams in a little bakery in the basement of a place in Nelson many years ago that eventually you took over and turned into a gallery / creative space for yourself, studio space. And what have you been doing with that project?
Well, so I first got the bottom floor, which used to be the Coconut Lounge.
Right.
And it was like my everything. Like I tattooed there, I slept there. Like sometimes 30 people would come in there a day and just hang out, and I just like paint and just like give discourses, probably high in LSD and whatever, and just like started to learn boundaries and started to like realize, okay, what I was doing was not sustainable. I had to like reel it in, and there was an intention that was slowly building inside me that was calling for like a closer and closer relationship to that quality of like what I am, you know, and how I can emit that and create a space around it and collaborate with others who are receptive to that, you know.
Right.
And the relationship with Christ was I mean, it wasn't awkward for me, but it felt like, you know, I go to church and be like, well, this isn't it, you know. It's like, yeah, praise Jesus, let's sing the songs. Like the worship's like, it's epic when everybody, you know, or kirtan, everybody's just singing songs for the love of whatever has created us, where we want to call that. But I go to church, and then it's that the whole judgment dogmatic piece would come in. I'd just be like, shit, okay, well. Then I ended up
like it either.
I ended up getting kicked out of the band because I was talking about breathwork and meditation, and as soon as I mentioned ayahuasca, you know, it's over. And then I was supporting in an ayahuasca community. I was like the guy who helped you like clean up your bucket or get you to the bathroom or get you back to your breath. I'm also a breathwork facilitator, and but then in the space when I started bringing out the prayers in Christ's name, then I triggered all the religious trauma, you know. So like I was like, okay, I feel like I just need to create a space, you know. And it's not a religious space per se, but it's a very devoted spiritual container, you know. And I feel like, you know, with that intention of like, okay, I need to create like the church to end religion, you know, the church that basically welcomes all prophecies, all lineages, all masters. Like, you know, you got a master? What's he say? You know, what's she say? Like, what's their archetypal way of bringing all this divine light and then transmitting it in a way that we can digest in this finite way of being in our bodies and in our, you know, in this third dimension, and how it fractals out. And what I realized was the point of connection that seemed to be missing for me, that I kept having to get closer and closer to, was embodiment, like actually landing in my body stable enough to receive, you know, to receive these higher energies. It
comes back to the drinking soup and drinking water and chopping firewood, like the simple aspects of this planetary life that need to maintain us. And
exactly.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, we worked very hard. Some part of me feels like we worked hard to get here. To manifest this place. So we can be wandering around in these meat machines observing this place. And if we start chasing, you know, through substances or through music or anything that takes you up, gets you higher, if we start chasing those heights, eventually you end up hungry or thirsty or without firewood, you know. Like this initial thing that is the primary gift that brought us here, is this form we're in. And there's something to caring for that, reaching both directions at the same time, perhaps.
Exactly. Yeah. Like be grounded enough to reach for the highest highs and still have a part of us here that can do our taxes and the dishes and whatever else we've got to take care of to maintain this dimension of reality. You know? And so I started with the first floor, and I just like the prayer started to manifest, its intent started to manifest, and I knew what I was here to create there, you know? So I feel like when we come in alignment with that higher purpose, the things just start to manifest and just almost come to our doorstep, you know? So I was basically offered a float tank, and I'm like, okay, where do I put this float tank? I'm tattooing here. Then I was offered to build my tattoo shop somewhere else. I was like, okay, I'll build a tattoo shop there.
Great.
Then I was offered an infrared sauna, and so I put the sauna in, and then I was offered to have a stage built. So I built a little stage for like sacred musical performance and discourse, and like just a sacred container for people to transmit these higher dimensions of energy and, you know, song and word and, you know, all the divine expressions.
And
then I got the second floor, so the landlord's just like, basically rented the whole thing. I didn't have to pay for any of it, and I built like treatment rooms, built a whole nother treatment room out of what was the living room, a communal kitchen there, and so the second floor is like practitioner room. So a lot of this was, it's like a rebirth center, you know, because I don't really have the time on this podcast to talk about what led me to fasting for a year. But I was going through a spiritual rebirth, you know, mind, body, spirit, Trinity, like coalescing into one through dramatic experiences of purging like generations of trauma with no support and like almost losing my shit so many times, you know. And I felt like we're all going to go through the eye of the needle, you know, at some point of our lifetimes. Like we need multiple kind of rebirthing centers to rediscover what we are through these like tightly wound thresholds of what we believe to be based on what we've been taught. And, you know, that's what I feel like this center has ultimately become. I ended up taking over the whole building. I live on the third floor now. We have the opportunity to purchase the building next year, which is the only way we can keep the vision going.
Right.
And then it was like, oh, if we make it a church, we can get tax-free donations. And, you know, if we're a society, we have all these breaks, you know, so it just made sense to turn it into a church.
Yeah, so. Or something of both already. So,
So, it's become the sanctuary of the living spirit.
Well, how do you offer this space to the public, to people who want to find it? I don't want to send everyone running to your door.
Right.
So I want to know how people listening in can get the full meal in a way that's comfortable for you.
Well, we have a mailing list, and we're rebranding our website to actually, because it's been the bridge, right? That's what it's been. It's kind of been soft open the whole time. You know, beginning with me just being an artist with no boundaries, and then leading into something more cohesive and put together. And now, like, we're doing the paperwork. We're actually launching. We got all the gear to have a podcast, to have a channel to share all this beautiful wisdom. And we do a lot of focus on physical detoxing, parasite cleansing, like the inundation of parasites in the Western culture and how much worms we actually carry in our body. I know we don't have time to go fully into that one, but let's just say the protocols that we do, 90+% of North Americans pull out 4 to 6 feet of worms from their first cohort. So there's all kinds of things we've collected karmically, you know, over lifetimes, over generations that live inside us and rudder our ship in subtle ways that lead us to places we don't want to be.
Right.
And I find in the emotional realms, in the spiritual realms, things can fractal or they're so nuanced and cyclical, and it's like you can forgive someone and then it comes right back if you do it in your mind. But when you get it out of your body, that's done. You know, when you really like release something on a somatic, physical level, whatever piece that was is over, you know. So this is the work we're focusing on, and we have somatic therapists, we have body workers, like we have a pretty robust team to essentially tackle any fractal of the mandala and bring us into wholeness again.
Branding is coming together, and your means for the public to approach you. I definitely would love to promote you on our project, on our radio project.
Yeah,
I'd love to pull you back into the studio and do a long form piece, or maybe do something out of your spaces. You know, like the little cultural exchange between the two places would be a fun way to approach something. Future media.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be super fun. Yeah.
How are we doing for time here, Winston? We could just go forever. I could tell you and I could just talk for 3 hours.
Well, I love one of those necklaces too, man. That thing's dope.
That's sweet. Amazing. It's the only one that there is, but it's not to say more couldn't be made.
Yeah, custom.
How do you feel? We don't have anyone waiting, or we do have Danya in the ranks here who will be.
Well, let's wrap this one up.
Joseph.
If you want, but I mean, we've got 10 minutes until the next one. Yeah, we can wrap this one up. She's in at 6:15.
Yeah, great. What a pleasure. What a blessing. Yeah. I want to make sure that that I haven't left you without any messaging there that you want to share with the world right now.
Well, yeah, I guess to close, because I feel like that was a lot. It was a lot to digest.
Oh, there's so much with you to unpack. We can just go. I know. I feel it. I want to do more. This is great.
Yeah, something I've noticed in my awakening processes, and a key point for me, point of interest is looking at all the different lineages. I've hung out with lamas, Buddhists, Hindus, and had the blessing of having these amazing masters and teachers share the stories of their lineage with me. And that common thread of the sacred heart, or the bodhicitta, or this narrow gate, or the eye of the needle, this part of ourselves that opens to love everybody, have that ultimate compassion and love for all. And then in that love and compassion for all, we see that we are one. That somehow, I'm sitting over here in my clothes and you're there in yours. We got different SIM card numbers and whatever, we identify with, and we're one organism symbiotically working together. And when we live in that reality, then magic happens in a completely different way and at a completely different efficiency. And that the space that I've created, and even just the relationships like these that we can have, where you just feel that magnetic beauty of just seeing each other, is what I'd like to create more of and experience more of. And I'm just so happy to share that space with you today. And I'd love to have more.
Yeah, you as well.
More chats about it.
You remind me of a conversation I had with my son lately. He's 11 now, and
nice. It's a good number.
Yeah, he's a magic little person. We were talking about how if I go inside of me to the very, very middle of me, and he used to close his eyes and go inside of himself to the very, very middle of himself, if he can get past everything that makes him Garnet and everything that makes me, and you get back to the very middle, the place you get is the same. I get to the same place you get to. That's the place where we all came from when we decided, when that presence, whatever that great big I is, when it decided to break into millions of pieces so it could sit here at a table with another part of itself and have a podcast and have a conversation. So there's something in that. I think other cultures have definitely touched on this in the past, and the eye inside of me is as good as the eye inside of you, because it's the same eye. And it's good to see it.
Nice. Namaste, my friend.
I'm Winston McLovin for Radio Free Winlove here at the Kootenay Yoga Festival with my good friend Joseph Nillo, and it's been such a wonderful day here. So thanks for tuning in.
I don't know where the camera is.